Sounds About Right podcast. I'm your boy Nibs520. With me, as always, I got my man's Casey at the SAR bar. Check him out. And of course, we got Uncle Nate chilling with his T-shirt of the
Always.
week.
Yeah. Big Kahuna. Shout out to Paul Fiction.
There it is. For those of you that don't know, right, gentlemen, this week we got a little bit of a somber, not a little bit, a lot, a somber topic. We lost another one. We've been losing rappers left and right this year, but this past weekend, Takeoff of the Migos was shot and killed out in Houston over a dice game. Let's just dive right into it. Keith, man, what's going on with all these rappers being shot?
First of all, let me apologize for my background noise, just like Nibs. Thank you. I am in a cigar bar along with uh, a lot of Kansas City fans and Titan fans watching the Sunday night game. So that's the excitement that you hear in my background. And then to top it off, uh, they have a live band that's playing. So it's just like a lot of hoopla going on right now. But I do want to say, as far as the rappers, for me, I consider myself to be a little old school. Uh, the rap game is different. I think, um, unfortunately, a lot of the lyrics and the set claiming has spilled over from the music into the streets. Uh, but also with that, even if there's like not quote unquote set tripping, you still have to deal with they set themselves up to be targets because they're rapping this life, be it glorious or not, or the street life, and they out here, and there's people out here trying to prove like, hey, you're not all that you said that you are in your rap lyrics. Not literally saying that to them, but just testing them. Uh, when you think about some of the people, most of them have been caught in situations that they probably shouldn't have been in. Obviously, we got, we'll talk about that when you think about like Takeoff, this most recently. Like, dude, you're at a dice game, you're millionaires, and you're at a freaking dice game. And I'm not trying to, downplay that. I get it. That's life that you claim to be about. But dice game in the wee hours of the morning.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, Nate, we got 15 rappers so far in 2022 that have been murdered, and all of them under the age of 40, right? Most of them not even 30 yet. And the common theme so far this year has been the location of the murders have either been at or near their homes of where they grew up or where they were raised, or some setting like a nightclub, out hanging out with the homies, right? Nate, man, what's your take on that? I mean, Keith kind of touched on it. Do you think that is just what it is, or is it because they're famous and people want clout for killing
I,
them?
I think there's a lot of stuff going on. And I think each individual situation is different, right? Like you're talking about 2022. If you really look
Yeah,
at it, there's been a huge tick up since like 2018, right? Like every once in a while, like once every year or two, you would hear about a rapper before they getting killed. I looked it up on Wikipedia, and I was looking at it, and I was like, wow, all of a sudden in 2018, there's like four or five, every 3 4 months, there's a rapper getting killed, like since 2018. That's just completely insane. And that got me thinking about it, right? Um, I think PNB Rock is a good example. He was one who was murdered back in September. He
September
was
in LA.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, because and it was because of Instagram. The girl he was with posted his location. Everybody knew where he was at. They could go get him. So I mean, you take in that social media factor where we get to watch their lives basically. You follow a rapper, they taking pictures. We know where they at. We know what they're doing. And if you're a fan, that's great. But if you got a problem with dude, that's just salt in the wound every single time you see him flossing. So there's that part of it. We could also go in. So there's the social media aspect. You could also go into the fact that I think dudes move different. Like, um, we all older, say our old head stuff that we get yelled at about by youngins, but we move different. Like older dudes moved different, and the people we grew up watching moved different. They didn't. flash their jewelry. You'll hear Ice T talk about how like I think he had a tweet a little bit ago about talk about how when he goes out in LA, he doesn't have his jewelry on. He's not flossing. He's not bringing attention to himself. So I think there's that difference of moving different. You brought up the fact that a lot of these cats have been, murdered in their hometowns. Like I know Young Dolph's situation where he was just getting cookies from his mom for his mom, and he got shot.
Yep.
They don't. This whole keep it real thing got everybody staying local, and when you stay local, there's that dude you went to kindergarten with who has beef with you, and now you're still in that same neighborhood. He's still seeing you living your life to the fullest. He get jealous. He take it. So then you can always go into that whole I don't know if people value life at all anymore. Like they don't.
Yeah, look at Archie Ebersol, the dude from We Ready. Remember that? You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? That was one of the biggest songs when it came out. His brother killed him. You know what I mean? In his
Yeah.
own house. You know what I mean? And then he took off trying to get some help, and they found him at the gas station with a hole in his face. Like these people aren't being most of the time, right? They're not being killed by people they don't know. They're being killed by people in their own hood or in their own families. Like the shit is crazy. And like you said, it's that keep it real culture. A lot of these people stay, um, around where they from. Maybe they feel comfortable there. But you got to understand, to Keith's point earlier, you're a millionaire now. You know what I mean? Like you don't see dudes who become famous actors and make millions for the most part staying in the hood. They move. You know what I mean? You don't in pretty much every other, basketball players, athletes, these dudes get millions and they move where other millionaires are. You know what I mean? Because the mindset is different.
But
You
then you
know,
still got to be careful even
Keith,
with that one. Like because look at Pop
yeah,
Smoke. Look at Pop Smoke. No, he was renting a $1 million mansion. People ran up on him to rob him and killed him. So I mean, yeah, even then, even if you move out, you still got to watch the way you move, and you got to watch the way what people know about you, because people want what you got. You know?
in our
Talk about that because you touched on something, Nate, and I want you all to think about this. Flashy, I heard that was one of your operative words. You talk about flash. Something else too is that the guy who had the home in L.A. and people were following him. So going back to the PNB Rock, and I know the story is the young lady posted on social media, and then people was like, "Oh, this is where they at." Just as well they're watching online, they're watching in the physical. So the word on the street is that with PNB Rock, uh, it actually was some people that noticed him going back to the Flash. He had on a lot of jewelries, and he's going in his Roscoe's, which is in the hood. If you're familiar with LA over there on the Brea, oh yeah, you're in the hood. And the word is that as much as we're saying the young lady posted, which of course could be bad in itself as well, but it is that some type of communication went out like, hey, we got pretty much like we got a stain, we got a victim over here that we can hit up because they came in straight to rob. So, but going back to adding to your point, you can't be flashy, man. How you flashy and you're going to hang out in an area that you're not even from or you're not familiar with. That's essentially, and I could be absolutely wrong. I'm just saying, being in the Arizona area, there's a lot of California cats. It's, in this area, that's the word on the street from these guys. Some of them I really do take their word and believe.
Mhm.
yeah, and I think for me personally, I look at today's culture, right? With it's the right now culture, right? Everybody's posting everything they do on the internet. And, you got dudes on Twitter, Instagram, pretty much you name it. There's not only them, but then the people on their team. Then you have like Keith pointed out, right? Then you got people out in the street. They see famous people. What's the first thing they do? They get their phone out. Oh, look, let me take a selfie with so and so, right? And then they post that to their story. Then you get, it just continues. More and more people, more and more eyes on you. You like you're saying, you got guys like Ice T, Ice Cube. You look at all the members of NWA, they're still around. Like, with the exception of Easy E, but that was health related, and he ain't got nothing to do with being shot, right? And you know, the all most of the guys who we grew up with gangster rappers are still around, right? Because they moved different. You know what I mean? You know, Tupac and Biggie, those were isolated situations. You know, and even Tupac, right? Whenever you saw Tupac out in the street, you didn't see, you know, to Keith's point, you didn't see him with all his jewelry on and this, that, and the third. When he got shot, he had on a regular, like a basketball jersey and some jeans. You know what I mean? He wasn't iced out. He wasn't, you know, and he was hanging out with people that, you know, he supposedly trusted. So there's that. And you know, with Takeoff, you know, this weekend we're talking about a dice game in Houston. You know, he's around the other Migos members. There was Errol Spence, the famous boxer. They were out there. A lot of, you know, rich young dudes out there. But again, all these dudes, you know, when you saw the pictures, they've all got like a million chains on. They're flashing their money, you know, and it's a dice game, you know, with regular motherfuckers. So that you got to deal with, you know, with that as well. Um, you know, we're talking about 15. I'll just run them down really quick. Since beginning of this year, literally on day one, January 1st, Little Devin, Earl Swavey, Wavy Navy Pooh, T. Dot Woo, Snooty Wild, Gunu, Archie Eversol, Sudu Moose, Trouble, FBG Cash, Rolly Bands, Jada Youngin, Young Slow B, PNB Rock, and of course we just talked about him. You know, take off. So you know, not all these guys are, you know, super duper famous, but they're all rappers. And again, outside of two of these guys, all of them were killed either in their hometowns or, you know, in public settings. Right? There were two home invasions that were not in their hometown. PNB Rock and I believe CD Woos, who was in a different country. So you know, again, we're talking about not just killing, you know, young rappers, but young black men who, you know, were doing something with themselves. And these are just the guys who've been shot. The list of guys who've been killed violently, you know, that are rappers this year is much longer. You know, if I had pulled up the ones who were, you know, strangled, stabbed, you know, we'd be going on all night. Nate, man, what do you think is the message out there to these rappers that, you know, can kind of slow this down
Well, the
if
first
there is
thing,
one?
like, and one of the things that we're doing is a lot of, I would say, like victim blaming, right? Like, you should be able to wear a fancy, you should be able to wear an expensive chain or something like that. You know, like if we're talking about hypothetical perfect world. So I don't really want to do like victim blaming, but a couple of things that like stand out, like while you're reading that list though, how many of those names had gang stuff in their actual name? Like how many of them, just think about that for a second, like while you're reading that off. A lot of people when they
Hmm.
just in their name is claiming the set. So that's one thing. Just by your name, you're saying that you're part of this, still part of this gang, and that everything you're doing is publicizing that gang. So that's one thing. You gotta leave that street stuff alone at some point, right? Like there's other ways you can help your neighborhood other than have them be gang banging. You can go out and you can do other, do good things for your community, the community you came from. So I mean that's the first thing. And then to some degree, you don't gotta still live there to do that, right? Like you can there's things you can do with that and protect yourself and move out of those types of neighborhoods. And yeah, you know what? Yeah, you've earned it. You want to be fly, you want to be flashy, but maybe tone it down because there's a lot of people out here who are hungry. And there's a lot of people out here who don't like you. You combine that, and bad things can happen. So uh, there's been jack boys around for a very long time. So yeah.
Yeah. Keith, when you know you make these points about, you know, these guys and where they stay at, and you know the culture that we live in now, right? How much do you attribute, you know, the social media world that we live in now to what's really going on with these rappers, and not just the guys who've been shot, but you know, the robberies, the stabbings, etc. Like, how much of that do you really think that weighs into it?
Um, I think social media is huge, man, because What happens with social media, and I think about this, jokingly with people in relationships, right? You know what I'm saying? You're on Facebook, and they're like, "Hey, why go unread? I seen you was online, but you didn't respond back, right?" You got to think about with social media. For me, I think it's an indirect tracking. It's a tracker, and it puts it's easier to share information about you with someone else or get information about you from someone else and then make it happen for whatever it is that these guys out here. And it's different times, man. People out here, man, they own these quote unquote stains, bro. They out here looking to see how they can take advantage of something. And here you come, one flashy, more well known rapper, and it's easy to find information about somebody when it comes to these rappers, and it don't have to be accurate information, but it's enough and it's tempting. Oh man, this dude got a net worth for this. This dude, you know what I'm saying, did a video and he had all this money. This dude said he walks around with all this money. You putting that glamour on yourself, and social media is not helping. One, because like I said, it's easy to track. Two, there's a lot of social media beef that occurs, and then cats are like, oh, okay, this way, oh, okay, he just tagged me at this location. Or for that matter, you've seen cats post and be like, I ain't worried about that because you know what I'm saying, this is where I'm at. Me and the guys, and there's people who willing to accept that challenge. All right, let's see what you and your guys can do. And it's not been, looking good when you think about it. And I can only imagine uh, if it wasn't social media, how less likely some of these deaths could have been avoided. So, social media plays a huge part. I don't want to put a number to it. Obviously, we don't have that type of information, but I think it's very huge. And cats are not using the social media platform right when they're trying to put themselves out there.
Nate, do you agree with that? Bro?
Yeah, I think I think that I don't like to blame social media, and the reason why is because, like, I mean, when we were younger, right? We all remember how rap music. I mean, I know rap music was very important to me when I was young in the early '90s, big, and there was no congressional meetings about how rap music is impacting the children and all this other stuff, where it was violence in movies. There's always been something that we point to and we say that this is actually the problem. So I hesitate to do that with social media because social media does a lot of good too. So to say that, oh, it's social media, I think it's a way for us to take away responsibility. There's a personal responsibility that we all have. I mean, we're in the generation. I have an 18-year-old child. That means that I am in a generation that raised these children who are out here doing this stupid stuff, right? Like, there's a responsibility that we have as parents to make sure the kids don't go out there, look on social media, and try to kill somebody. Um, Now, are there other factors, cultural, or where you grew up, or um, no other aspects? Yeah, but I mean, I think that social media gets a lot of blame because it's easy. When you know what, if you don't want your kid looking at something online, look at what they're looking at online. Change it. So I mean, I think it's just an easy scapegoat. Um, but I mean, we have to adjust the way we are as a society because of social media. It's been become a big part of it. So that's my thought on it, which is mismatched and just all over the place. But still, I try.
So, so in response to that, social media definitely has a good perspective. When you look at it is for the good. The intent for social media: connect over family, friends, classmates, network, build together with people. Yes, but it does, for me, it does play a part in regards to what's going on because people are not using it the right way. Hence, and I'll just use the analogy, maybe a strong analogy, or too strong of an analogy. When you think about a weapon to protect your own, a gun, you have it to protect yourself, right? But then there are some, hence social media, there are some who use it to victimize, to find a way to cause harm. And for me, that's where the social media, that split comes in. And there's a lot of us. I think everyone that's on this platform right now, we use it the right way. We put a message out there. We have a conversation about things, and bring things to light. But at the end of the day, from an accountability standpoint, Nate, Gibbs, myself, I don't think we're using social media to be like, all right, well, I'm following this particular rapper. Let me see where he's going so I can go and try to, tear him off. But there's others who are not like us who use that platform and be like, oh, shit, he just checked in. Oh, okay, he in LA. Okay, okay, FBG Duck just checked in. He down on the Gold Coast in Chicago. Okay, gather the guys up. Let's go see what we can pull up.
Yeah.
To that point, and Nate, earlier you kind of touched on the responsibility of the older set, the parents, to guide these younger you know kids and even some of these younger adults, right, into, hey, this is how you should be acting, right? And all too often, and this is a rabbit hole we won't go down, but all too often now, a lot of these kids or young adults' parents ain't but 10, 15, 20 years older than them. There's not a lot of older parents anymore, right? So that, we have kids raising kids, etc., and that kind of leads to the problem. But what I want to kind of touch on to that is that, do you think that the older set, as far as the rappers that are, have been in the game for a long time, we were talking about, the Ice Cubes, the Jay Z's, the Tip, the Ti's, he's notorious for being in the trap, but he's navigated himself out of it, right? He's been able to keep himself, out of the way, the Twisters from, back home, and all that. Do you think they have any responsibility to kind of reach out to these younger dudes and say, hey man, this is how you move once you catch that deal or you get that first bag? Do you think there's any responsibility there, or should they just do it just to be decent dudes? I'll let you go first, Nate.
On that one, I think that bridge got burned, like, to some degree, because and it would have to come from certain people in that case. Maybe a Ti, maybe a Jeezy, Jay Z, a couple of dudes. But think about how that older generation talks about the younger generation as rappers and as musicians. They talk about them not in a positive way. They talk about how they can't rap, how look, lyrical, how they're not lyrical anymore, how basically their music is garbage. So that I think that kind of takes away from the influence that they could have, because these aren't they're looking at them, they're like, well, you're not a, you're not supporting my music. Why am I going to listen to you on this? So I mean, that's one thing where I think that's a problem, but um, where I don't know if the younger generation would listen. But at the same time, like, yeah, I think we all have that. If no none of us do this full time, right? Like, so when we're at work and you see somebody messing up, do you just let them mess up, or do you try to tell them, hey man, do it this way? This is the right way. So I mean, we do it at work, or I do it at work. I think I assume y'all do too. So why not? Why wouldn't you just try to? Hey man, this is what to watch out for. Hey man, this is a good way to move. You know, um, I think it's something that would be good. I don't know how it'd be received, um, but no, I think it's always the older people responsibility to try to help out younger people.
Yeah, what's your take on that, Casey?
Well, first of all, I don't think we have enough information to say if it's happening. It's quite possible that it is happening. And you got to remember, man, best practices, helping somebody at work, feedback or something like that. Feedback is a gift, bro. Whatever you do with that gift is on you. And I go out and get you something for Christmas. I don't know if we're gonna use it. I don't know if you like it. You can tell me that you do, but I don't know if you're going to apply that sweater that I got you, or that tie that I got you, or that hat, or something like that. That's how it is with feedback. A lot of these cats, they probably are getting that feedback, and they're just not applying it, or they're not taking it sort of like what you said. They're like, oh, well, you old, or you this and that. Oh, I ain't trying to hear you. Right? Now, here's another side to that. A lot of these older rappers, hence the word older, have taken on different responsibilities from a man or a female standpoint, from a family standpoint, father, husband, wife, or anything like that. There's responsibilities coming along with that. Like you have made your mind up. I can't live this particular quote unquote street life. So that's something else to keep in mind. That's really what's going on. And I know we don't. Again, I'm trying to be careful with how I speak because I don't have this information. But when you think about it, how many of these rappers was out with their kids when this happened? How many of these rappers was out with their family going to a Sunday dinner or a Saturday evening dinner or a formal event when this happened? How many were going maybe to uh, the office because not from a music standpoint, but because they have a business venture that they're working on and they want to go and sit down with some colleagues and figure some stuff. There's a lot of stuff that come into play when you think about that, because a lot of them is just like I just live this life. That's it. That's all I got. And even if I don't live this life, I'm rapping like I really live this life. So, that's just my take on it. I think we're highlighting and hitting on some of the same things. But for me, I'm just looking at it at a slightly different perspective in regards to there may have been some conversations with guys like, hey, man, you might want to slow down. It's up to that individual to take that feedback and do something.
And just something real quick to piggyback off what you said, and that like as you were talking, it triggered a thought. I remember I was reading, and I might get this a little jumbled up, because I was watching it on TV a couple weeks ago, or yeah, I don't know. I lost track of time. But it was little baby was talking about Young Thug and how Young Thug helped him out when he was getting started and actually paid him just to get off the street and into the studio. So like, and we all know about Young Thug's situation. I mean, but that's
Hmm.
something that little baby was saying that this dude was doing. So to your point, it it's going on to some degree, right? Like that's something that happened. I mean, he paid him to get off the street and into the studio. Um, so I mean, that's something that yeah, it's probably happening all over the place, but you know, it still needs to be well. I don't know. We just need more information on that, I guess, right? So
I'll do one
Yeah, I
solid.
mean,
I'll let you. I'm sorry, Nibs. When you
no,
think
go ahead,
about
bro.
that, that was in his case. What about the cats? Some of these rappers who have encountered success and they're more successful than the person that came before them, trying to give them some helpful information. It's like, dude, you broke. Or, dude, you ain't got it like that to be trying to help tell me what I need to do.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean that happens all the time, right? Like you look at a lot of these younger dudes, and it's kind of like you can say that across the board in any arena, right? Like if I'm a NBA player coming into the league now, and some dude who played 20 years ago is trying to tell me how to work my footwork or do this or move and this, that, and the third. I'm like, yo, man, I got $150 million. I don't need to listen to you. You made 20 grand a year. Get out of my face. You know what I'm saying? But that dude's still around, right? Like, you know what I mean? And it could probably still bust that young dude's ass. Like, what was it? Dr. J said, his son when he was younger used to always come to him like, Dad, I can beat you in basketball. You old. And he said, look, we played a 15. I'd give him 14 points, and and I would always win 16-14 because you win by two. He said, it ain't got nothing to do with how much you making now, or what you're doing now. Sometimes you got to listen to the dudes who did it before you because they paved the way, right? They they you know I kind of feel like if Snoop reached out to somebody, right? Like you're gonna respect what that man says, no matter how much money he got in his bank account. because he was in the street. A Fat Joe, he's not broke by any means. You might be making more than him now, but guess what? He moved in the streets and he moved in his career, right? So these dudes might get a little bit more, Jay Z's, things like that, right? And we've all seen the stories. Jay Z has brought along some dudes, but to your point, not all of them listen. For every Meek Mill, there's a million, little Joes who don't listen and end up, in the street, in jail, dead, whatever the case may be, because they just didn't. They were hard headed, and we all know the old saying, "Hard head make a soft ass."
Well, and one thing on that, Nibs. I mean, just to point out, I would say to anybody who's like they're talking about how hard they are or how for their community they are, and they don't have to worry about it. If Nipsey Hussle can get it in Crenshaw, anybody can get it anywhere, and that's just something to think about. Like Nipsey Hussle got killed in Crenshaw, and there's that dude was doing like so much for his community, just to a whole different level of for his community. So just keep that in the back of your head, man. I mean, yeah,
That's a good point. And he was actually killed by somebody he had
yeah,
helped in the past.
there you
So,
go.
yeah, it's one of those things that Keith throws his hands up. I mean, it's like, well, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? But I would say that that's more of the exception than the rule, right? I think in Nipsey's case, right? Because again, when you just look at the numbers, most of the time these dudes are killed by people they either don't know or people who are just trying to come up or people that they do know who are just super jealous, that they should have cut off a long time ago because like the saying goes, you can't bring everybody with you. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes that comes against you. But yeah, Nipsey. I think that's what made Nipsey's murder so sad, right? Is because of everything he was doing for his community. He was doing what you were supposed to do when you get on, right? He was doing it the right way, and somebody he actually helped bring along came back, and um, it's one of those things. I was listening to an interview, where Fat Joe was talking about, he was in the streets and rap saved his life, obviously, right? But he said, you know, he had to move when he went to an event, and he said he showed up and there were 30 dudes there waiting for him, not to kill him, but to say, "Yo, Joe, we got you. They all killers. He knew all of them from the street. He said, we got you. We're gonna make sure you move through through this without, what I'm saying." And they were more well armed than the security he brought with him. And that's when Fat Joe said, "You know what? I think it's time for me to move out of New York." Because hey, if these dudes are showing up to help me, who's showing up against me? You know what I mean? So you have to think about that and move accordingly. Um, Casey, I just kind of want to throw it to you, man. What do you think, if anything, there is that can be done going forward to help prevent, this gun violence from, taking out our young black men and you know rappers, period. But it seems to be, more young black men are getting killed by this than anything else.
I don't want to jump in from laws and policies standpoint because guns are real. And I think that's where the accountability comes in, man. The understanding of the harm that you not only cause to the fellow person but yourself. Because if you get caught, obviously, there's going to be something to pay, whatever that may look like. We just got to do better, man. But that's going to start with self. It's like we got to do some self accountability. We can talk about all the helping people and all these programs to help at-risk youth, people who don't have things to do in neighborhoods and things of that nature. It really comes down to the individual. You gotta something has to tell you that's not right. Something, whatever that may be. So for me, I think there needs to be more self accountability on our end, and We can talk about laws and policies all day because technically we have some of the strongest laws and policies when it comes to gun violence, but the shit is still happening.
Nate, what's your take on that, man? What do you think, if anything, can help quell this a little bit, or slow it down, or get this shit moving in the right direction?
The first thing I want to do is I agree fully with Casey on the on gun laws. I think that would not be a useful thing. Guns have been around since before rap. So to think that stricter gun laws are going to save people, I don't really believe. I mean, I can see the supply thing. I can get, I can see that point, but people always had guns, you know. Um, I think it's a societal issue though, and we're talking about rappers right now, right? But in all reality, it's anybody who's successful. I mean, we're talking about rappers. You've mentioned young black men, but really, this could be anybody who is starting to gain success. And it may not be on Instagram. You might not be flashing money, but somebody might know that you're doing well and come for you. So, I mean, I think that it's for everybody. It's to protect yourself. You know, move smarter. And I don't, when by protect yourself, I don't mean buy a gun. I'm not saying that. I mean like protect yourself on how you portray what you're doing, who you tell what you're doing, those types of things. And then from a societal standpoint, we this has just been multiplying, right? It's just been building up for generations where people have been getting killed, you know. So I think we just have to do better as a society. Like I think people need to learn the value of a human life. Like there are people who will trade a human life for 10,000 followers. You know what I mean? Like that's just so mind blowing. There are people who would do that. So I think like getting that through, I mean, to people and just understanding that, hey, we're all in this together type of a deal. I mean, that's all I got.
Yeah, I mean, I think and I'll just be as candid as possible. I think that all too often people think that there's some reward or award for killing somebody famous. You know what that award is? Prison or death yourself, right? Or both. And it doesn't make you cool to kill Takeoff, PNB Rock, RG Eversol, any of these dudes, right? Any of the guys we mentioned this year, any of the guys who've, you know, the guy who killed Tupac and Big or Biggie. You're not cool. You're just an asshole who took away someone who was doing better than you in life. That's pretty much it at the end of the day. And if that makes you feel some kind of way about yourself, then there's a special place for you. We're not going to get into all that, but we all know where that is. I think it's important that and you both have touched on this, that you know we do better as a society teaching our younger people, our children, our you used to have the saying, hey, it took a village to raise a child. All too often people nowadays don't want you in their business. They don't want you touching or scolding their child. Look, sometimes we still need that. You need people, you need a community, you need communities to come together instead of, hey, everybody go off into your own little corners, because more often than not, it's our communities that will help us, as opposed to bring us down, if we again think correctly and choose to be better around each other. Fellas, I think that's it for tonight, man.